To our film study. We did The Thing. I'm Zach. I'm here with Sawyer, Pete, and Kalen, and let's hop right into it. So, The Thing is a classic 1980s horror film starring Kurt Russell as McReady. The film explores how people react differently during a crisis and the intricacies of teamwork and leadership when you cannot trust anyone. In the film, Dr. Copper examines a humanoid figure discovered in the ice and determines what the Thing is. The Thing is a shape-shifting alien who assimilates organisms and assumes their shape, personality, and memories. The Thing managed to gain access, posing as a sled dog. Blair, on his own volition, decides to sabotage their vehicles and radios to prevent worldwide spread. They lock him in a tool shed. After discussion, the group loses faith in Gary, and McReady is given authority and takes the gun from Gary. Knowles thinks McReady is compromised, and the rest of the group locks down the station. McReady breaks into the supply room anyway and holds the station hostage with dynamite, now forcibly assuming a leadership position. McReady devises a test and has everyone tied up. Testing one by one, he determines humanity by exposing blood samples to heat. Palmer is caught as an imposter, or the Thing, and incinerated. The remaining survivors decide to go test Blair, who has escaped. They decide to blow up the entire station anyway and destroy the Thing entirely. At the end of the movie, McReady meets up with a suspicious child where they wait to freeze to death while sharing a bottle of scotch. I'll now pass this off to Sawyer.
Thank you very much, Zach. So moving into our leader here, R.J. McCready, looking specifically at his leadership style and traits throughout the movie. And definitely you can see a great deal of self-leadership through emotional intelligence, strength, resilience, and values. And with the team, he displays a great deal of autocratic leadership and coercive power. These were used as the ends justify the means, as we will get into here. So moving into our first scene here. In the scene in which Windows attempts to steal a gun out of paranoia and Gary threatens to kill him, we see a prime example of emotional intelligence from McCready. In this emotionally charged situation, McCready immediately steps in, recognizing that an innocent man's life could be at stake. This is due to everyone's paranoia of who could be infected and who isn't. McCready talks down Gary, telling him he doesn't want to hurt anyone, then gets Windows to disarm himself, proving that there is no longer a threat at hand. With this happening, it showed McCready's ability to keep self-control and stay calm in a life-threatening situation. With the ability to understand the feelings of the others at hand involved in the situation, they're scared and they're threatened, and appeal to their emotional natures. And being able to ensure that he was able to speak rationally, show reason, use controlled emotional responses, and recognize how he was being viewed. Voice of reason, looking out for everyone, McCready was able to successfully defuse, disarm, and resolve the situation, showing excellent leadership skills through emotional intelligence and ability to take control of the situation. This resulted in Gary stepping down from his official leadership title and McCready claiming it. In the following scene here, McCready displays autocratic leadership in the scene in which he assembles the whole team outside to burn the infected blood, following the previous scene mentioned. McCready orders Doc, Gary, and Clark to separate themselves from the other, as they've each proven to be a threat. This shows that they could potentially be infected, and he orders Norris and Chalice to inject them with morphine and subdue them in the rec room to reduce any possibility of threat. And as they're moving into the blood testing scene, also minimal resistance towards the actual blood testing. Even though objections have been made, McCready holds his ground, and a flamethrower at everybody who objects to him. This showed coercive power as he is threatening them with their life. Do what I say or I'll kill you. This shows aggressive, dominant leadership behavior, dictation even. But the use is justified as this is an emergency situation and extreme measures needed to be taken to ensure the survival of everyone and resolve the issue at hand. This was further reinforced and justified by the values held by McCready in the situation being truth and transparency, figuring out who's infected and isn't, survival to outlive and eliminate the Thing, the greater good, preventing the Thing from reaching the populated land and infecting a human population. Finally, we move into our last point here and last scene, of which McCready displays excellent strength and resilience. During the blood testing scene, McCready displays resiliency. Through the entire team having betrayed him previously, he chooses to test his blood first as a show of good faith to show that he is not infected and rebuild trust with the team. Everybody that was shown to have a negative test to the blood, or sorry, their blood to show up negative to the test, was rearmed and let out of their restraints. Again, rebuilding trust within the team itself. Even though he had been battered and absolutely abused throughout this whole situation, he still wanted to show everyone that he trusts them and he wants everyone to survive. This scene also displayed McCready's execution, strength-based leadership, as he knows exactly what he needs to do to prove to everyone that he's not infected, to rebuild that trust in the team, create transparency and truth, to show them who's infected, who isn't, and reestablish just general trust throughout. This also reinforced the commitment from the team towards the end goals of survival and the greater good. All in all, this shows that McCready ensures that he is making all the tough decisions to ensure safety of his team and unmask the hidden threat of those who are infected and allow all threats to be eliminated throughout. Now I'm going to pass this off to Kalen for the following point here.
Thank you, Sawyer. All right, moving into leadership effectiveness at an organizational level, and more specifically, how our leader, McCready, creates and maintains a vision for his current environment. So our leader in question here, R.J. McCready, does not begin the movie as a leader. He's thrown into a situation where he is elected to be the leader. Therefore, he is required to adapt and pick up a leadership role within the crew. By the time McCready is in a leadership role, it is established that the thing has spread amongst the crew, and it could be anyone. Knowing this, McCready creates the vision that is essentially it's either us or them. Us or it. This bold ideal is the driving force behind his ability to command the support and trust from those in his crew that are still human. McCready plays into the idea that internal fighting is exactly what the thing wants, and this helps to calm down his crew as much as possible, which leads to them being able to work as a collective. Eventually, the challenge of this movie becomes preserving the safety of humanity. As should the thing find its way into a populated area, there's no limit to how many living life forms it could assimilate into its collective unconscious. That being said, McCready over time adapts his approach to the entire situation, going from a we can kill it and survive approach to one of we may all die, but we can take the thing down with us and save humanity in the process. Despite the mortality of the characters staring them in the face, McCready is still able to inspire them to do the right thing. This says a lot, as we are biologically programmed to prioritize self-preservation over anything else. This just goes to show how effective a leader McCready ended up being come the end of the film. Even when it ended with the deaths of the entire crew, they were able to save humanity by making the ultimate sacrifice. Moving forward here, looking at how McCready created and sustained culture within his team in terms of their environment. Now, throughout the thing, the main factor that keeps people unable to trust one another is the fact that nobody knows how it infects you, and nobody can truly tell who is infected unless the thing chooses to reveal itself. As stated by McCready during the film, trust is a hard thing to come by these days. This is until McCready learns that if you expose infected blood to extreme heat, it will expose the monster's cells, revealing it. McCready then ties everyone up and takes heat to blood sample. He exposes those who are infected, but in doing so solidifies the trust of everyone who is left for the rest of the movie. It can be argued that a do-or-die mentality of following McCready to the end becomes the culture for the remainder of the film. It was also established from the blood testing scene on that everyone now has a sense of identity. People now know who they can trust, and as we have learned about in this course, building trust is one of the most important things a leader needs to do to find any success in terms of winning over and gaining the support of their peers. When people are willing to die for the one that they believe in, this says everything about the effect their leader has had on them and the culture they have established. Moving into my last point here, looking at how our leader, McCready, encouraged change within the context of their work and at what level the changes were implemented. So due to the sudden need for survival and a sense of preserving the greater good, the entire context and the work being done shifts to address these problems. McCready, up until this point, was never an established leader. He just led in certain instances. He is now voted for by the majority, however, to take control of the main firearm that had been held by Gary up until this point. This essentially establishing him in a dominant leadership role. Therefore, regarding how he encourages change, he starts off by talking outside with everybody at the camp to declare, I know I'm human, and if you were all those things, you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it, and then it's won. There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours, and we're going to find out who's who. It should also be noted that prior to this, Dr. Blair destroyed their only helicopter and their communications equipment. From this point on, everybody now knows that everything else going on in the camp is completely irrelevant, and the only thing that matters is killing the thing before it can assimilate the entire camp. Everyone in the group also knows that they are not going anywhere as they no longer have any transportation or communications, so they're more than likely to die. Now, the reasonable thing to do here for any normal person would be to follow a leader that they can trust in order to save humanity, even at the potential cost of their own life. Now, considering these points, it's fair to say that change took place on an individual level, a group organizational level, and an argument could be made for a societal level, as the success or failure of their killing of the thing affects human civilization as a whole. I'm now going to pass this off to Pete.
All right, thank you very much, Kalen. All right, so moving on to business lessons here. The first scenario in the film that I want to discuss that occurs within the film is shortly after when the team station in Antarctica first encounters the thing. The team is going to need to prepare quick to adapt and think of a way it can effectively contain this new potential threat. So how I perceive this scene from the movie and how it can be translated into a real-world business situation is looking back to early 2020 during the origin period of the coronavirus pandemic. Throughout the world, there was a major sense of uncertainty in terms of how serious this new illness could potentially be and how it could impact and disrupt the world as we know it. Lots of businesses across the world had quickly make a hard decision of shutting down their doors for the best interest of the public safety at the time. So in relation to the concepts we have studied in this class, this translates to Module 1's coverage of emotional intelligence. Adaptability is a major competency of emotional intelligence, and those businesses that were impacted at the beginning of the pandemic needed to think quickly to become adaptable to the changes in the world of business that were taking place. An adaptable leader can rise to challenges or struggles that can quickly occur, and RJ McCready was able to begin leading his team to adapt to this uncertainty that was impacting their camp and potentially the rest of the world, very similarly to the business's response to the pandemic in early 2020. So I think the lesson to be learned here that can translate to the business world is that leaders must learn to be agile, to be able to adapt to uncertainty. Every day can bring new challenges, and what was working in the past might not necessarily work tomorrow. All right, moving on here, please. So the second scenario in the film that I want to discuss that occurs is when McCready becomes the leader of the station. Throughout all the anxiety and tension that is occurring internally as a result of the threat of the thing that could be present amongst the camp, so he makes the decision to quarantine his partners as he quickly tries to come forward with a solution that can help determine who is truly who and potentially put an end to the situation where the thing can be ready to threaten. While McCready's initiatives stepping up as leader to the team may have caused some tension and anger amongst the station, it was all about doing what was necessary to overcome adversity and try to find a solution to a dire situation. So this adversity that was seen in the film can be translated to a situation in the workplace where adversity could strike. Symptoms such as ineffective management or poor work culture can create a truly challenging situation internally within a business and can lead to undesirable outcomes such as financial and emotional adversity, as well as conflict. An effective leader that can build an effective strategy that can be used to overcome adversity at play, which can further be used going forward to prevent this hardship from happening or to be better prepared for future situations of it. So in relation to the concepts learned in class, this can translate to Module 2's strengths and resilience, specifically Stoltz and Margolis' article of bouncing back from adversity. It orchestrates a number of effective methods that could be considered when dealing with tough times, such as controlling a crisis, looking for ways to improve it, as well as making the assumption that the crisis can be contained versus worrying about the long-lasting impacts it might have. These can directly relate to the scene in the movie where McCready quarantines his station team and he quickly tries to control the crisis with a goal set in mind with objectives being to contain it. So the lesson to be learned here that can translate to the business world is that adversity can define the strength of a leader when things aren't safe or certain anymore. When a difficult situation arises, a strong leader needs to step up and make a change and step out of their comfort zone for the best interests. Okay, moving on here. So the last scenario I want to discuss that occurs within the film is in the final moments when McCready encounters Childs after their compound has been blown up. McCready does not know if Childs is truly the thing, but there's an unspoken trust they have amongst each other in their final moments to recognize each other for who they truly are. So trust plays a huge importance in business. To function as a team or an organization, there needs to be a sense of faith and honesty to be successful. Those who trust each other in the world of business are more likely to spend less time protecting themselves and can allow for stronger overall relations that can help a business flourish both internally and externally. So in relation to the concepts learned in class, this can translate to Module 3's building effective teams. In Lencioni's article of Building Trust, he discusses the effectiveness in building trust by having the tendency to preserve harmony, even when a good fight is needed. McCready and Childs are in a very uncertain position, sharing the last sequence in the film together. The threat of the thing could still be likely very real, but instead of initiating a further fight, they both decide to be civil amongst themselves, sharing a moment of peace in the final hours. But in the back of their minds, they were ready for each other to attack. So I think the lesson that can be learned here regarding business is that leaders need to have faith and belief in their team for their team to have faith and belief in them. Without trust, it's hard to effectively work as a collective team, and will make it very difficult to overcome times of hardship and adversity in the business world. So I'm going to pass it back off to Zach now.
So, The Thing is a great example of multiple different aspects of leadership, from coordinating to seeking out imposters. It demonstrates forcible, autocratic leadership and the stark contrast to democratic leadership. With no one able to be trusted, it strains the relationships between everyone. McReady is a strong, decisive leader and confidently carries himself and, despite forcefully seizing power, uses that power for the greater good of the team. He is able to make the tough decisions, like destroying their sole source of shelter, for the greater good of all of humanity. McReady demonstrates agility and resourcefulness, two attributes any business leader should have. And all that's left is our references. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah.